We've had 2 more meetings. Monday night, we met with the VCAC, and the VCAC originally had 49 members. We expanded it with some Vietnamese, 3 different Vietnamese language community members, so for a total of 52 members. In our meeting, we had 33 members attend, and we reviewed the plan with that, and we took any suggestions that they gave, we accepted. And so anybody who said we'd prefer to, any single member who said we'd prefer to keep this location open, we accepted that without debate. Then we had another SEAC meeting, a second SEAC meeting, to review that plan, and then to also have our quarterly meeting. And for a second time, they looked at the plan, and in that meeting, there's currently 12 SEAC members. There's 1 vacancy right now. We had 6 show up in person, 6 virtual, and they had no more, I don't believe they had any other changes. We also received some suggested changes from some school districts, cities, and some commissioners. And so where we're at today, as of today, we have a total, you have in front of you a new substitute attachment A, because when we turned this in on Friday, there was an attachment A with the proposed closures. And so there's a new one today that's sitting on your desks, and that totals 53 closures. 10 in District 1, 17 in District 2, 13 in District 3, and 13 in District 4.
12 in District 4, Mr. Scapel.
Pardon me?
12?
I believe it's 13.
Okay, I have 12, so just,
Yeah, and if I told it wrong, whatever's on that attachment.
okay.
And so that's what we have before you today for your consideration.
Can you define turnout impact for us?
Sure.
What do you mean by turnout impact?
I'm sorry, Judge, could you repeat that? I didn't hear.
So estimated turnout impact,
Yes.
what do you mean by that?
So in that column, it says estimated turnout. That is what we project for turnout for the May 7th election. And when we project turnout.
That would have used those polls?
Pardon me?
That would have used the polls that are
Yes,
closed?
yes.
Okay, but this isn't an estimate that those people will be impacted and not able to vote. This is just they'll vote somewhere else.
Yes. And you'll notice that for the most part, those are very low numbers. There are 3 locations that had higher numbers, like 180, 200, but those were not because of decisions that our groups made. That's because those are under construction and they won't be available anyway. So those will be closed regardless of what we do here today.
Do you know off the top of your head, with the ones that we can't control because of construction, what does that reduce the number that would be impacted?
And in whose district?
I'm really having a hard time hearing.
I'm sorry, it's probably me, it's been talking nonstop to people. So what I was asking is, when we take off the 3 polling places that are under construction, I think you said 3, because we have no control whatsoever on a construction site. So I would assume that when we take those off, that's going to lower this estimated turnout impact, which I understand from what you said earlier is not an impact on the actual turnout of the election, but on people that statistically would have likely chosen a place that we are now going to close and will have to go somewhere else. So when we take off those 3 bigger constructions, what does that get us to?
There was that one for 189. It's around 500, 600.
Okay. So 500 or 600, so that leaves us with really about 1,800 people who are going to vote in a new place. And Commissioner Price asked, where are those 3 construction projects? Or whose district?
If you look on your sheet on the right-hand side under the notes column, that will indicate it. So the first one being V1013 North Dallas High School, per DSID under construction. That's 186 people. That is District 2. The second one is V2043 Brentfield Primary School. That's per RISD. It's under construction. That's 189, and that's in District 2. And the third one,
Brentfield primary, per ISD under construction.
Yeah, that was number 2, but what's number 3?
Well, you missed one. It was Lakewood Elementary, right there at the top of page 3.
Okay.
Yeah, Lakewood Elementary, North Dallas High School, and Brentfield primary.
And those are all in Commissioner Kratz's district.
Yes. Yeah.
This is what we publish this with.
This is probably old.
Yeah, Mr. Old. That's a larger volume. You have a
Okay,
larger.
okay. All right, does anybody have any questions before we hear from our public speakers? Or do we want to hold those until after we hear from our public speakers?
I have a few questions. Mr. Scarpello, the committee, the SICA committee, went ahead and reviewed all these locations. These input, their recommendations are shown in these numbers.
that is correct.
You also check with city secretaries of all the municipalities, their input. They all were present. They all gave their input as well.
Yes, I'll go ahead and review, because I was trying to be brief, but so to review what we did, we went to the Democratic and Republican parties first, then we went to the city secretaries, then we went to the ISDs, then we mailed out to VSAC, and we had a SEAC meeting, and then we had a second SEAC meeting, and then an in-person VSAC meeting. And so those were the steps, and every step along the way, we took those suggestions, no arguments. If someone suggested to keep open, we kept it open.
So if they suggested not to close, that was considered into these numbers as well.
Absolutely.
And this is for the May 24 election and the June election, the May 24 runoff and the June election.
The plan is this will be for the May 7th, the May 24th, and any June runoff.
Okay, May 7, May 24, and the June
Should
runoff.
be like a city deal?
The June runoff is the runoff for the May 7th election. So it's a May 7th joint and then a June 18th runoff. And then there's the May 24th election is the runoff from the primary.
Did you get a memo from Alicia Thomas, who's the city secretary of DeSoto?
I don't recall, but if we did, I don't know.
So I tell you, I've looked at that. So that is a request for at least 10 poll workers at Church of the Disciple, which is our second busiest voter center. I think we only had 6 last time, so.
Yeah, and as far as that goes, as far as our distributions of workers, we're kind of holding off until we get this decision, because when we get this decision, we will redistribute, and recalculate, if you will, and then.
No, that has nothing to do with it. We used your calculations when we went down this road before. And this was the second visit, and when you look at it traditionally, this has always basically been in that same rail. You allocated 6 poll workers. We had wait times up to, even this is the city secretary, up to as 4 hours. We got a mayor's race out there. I've got council races. I've got school board races. And
We can use our employee plan. We'll make sure that there's 10 people.
Okay.
We can get 10 people.
well, but then I'm also on this thing, Judge, and that's fine for whatever my colleagues want to do. I just find it, and again, we'll use the Skyline Branch and Skyline High School piece. The fact that we're not using the same process and allocation with regards to the numerical supposedly decider in terms of how we're dealing with that. The problem that I have is at Skyline, it may be within a half a mile radius. But again, I'm gonna tell you, just like I said before, culturally, each vote counts for me. And I'm still opposed to cause anything in District 3. Now, everybody else can do whatever they wanna do, but that is my opposition still.
So, as I've said to you, I don't, you're a voice, and if, right now, what we're doing is if we have a voice that says, I don't want to close, then we're not closing, and I'll support you on that, and Commissioner Koch, I think at the last meeting, said he would support you on that, so, I think that's gonna be a problem. But I think what we'll see when we close some of these is it doesn't violate anybody's right to vote. It actually makes the system work better because we're gonna have enough workers in the locations so that we don't have those long lines. That's the hope.
Well, the accessibility 4304 of the code, and I've said this before, the election code, says that each polling place shall have accessibility usually by the elderly and person with physical disabilities to be considered. They must meet standards established under Article 9102 revised statute, those following standards. And again, the code basically talks about impact on minority voters. It doesn't say anything about Section 4307 talks about this in selecting those polling places, the location, but it talks about impact on minority voters. And so that's it. And as I said, my particular district, at the last, and even if you go back, he keeps talking about the numbers he used, even before the last redistricting where we did 40% of the, and I know it was a different polling, but we did 40% of the voting. We did 40%. That means my other three colleagues did 60%, 20% apiece. It was a little different numbering than that.
No, District 2 was the highest proportion of vote.
No.
Oh, it was, yeah.
The total
Oh, yeah,
vote?
we were, yeah, no, we were,
No, hold
in this past election,
Is it total
Yes.
vote or by party?
by party.
total vote. Total vote,
Say
District
by
2.
party.
By party.
It's
And
talking
if you
by
look at
party,
the party,
Commissioner
even in
Koch.
your vote, in your district, by party, we still were
Yeah,
So
District
you're
3 was
talking
number
total
one.
vote, you're talking Democratic vote.
Democrat.
But the thing to remember is, I think unless my colleagues, surprise me, I think your request to have your site stay open in the district is accepted. And I know that some of the other commissioners have expressed concerns, or at least one of the other, maybe all the other commissioners have expressed concerns about something, and each time that's made the list, right? So there's not gonna be anything on this list that anyone has said they want us to leave open that's being closed. And by anyone, I mean a commissioner, a BSAC member, a SEAC member, a city secretary, a party chair, all those folks have agreed to these. What are we down to, Mr. Scarpelli?
53.
53.
To these 53.
I would like to say something that's point two, and that there's always a tension between accessibility and efficiency or cost or availability of personnel. I mean, there's always that tension.
Yep.
I would always err on the side of accessibility because I agree very strongly with Commissioner Price that our job as a county entity that has primary responsibility for providing fair, equitable election access for all of our residents. And so I would err on the side of accessibility. But that also means that sometimes I went through those locations in District 1 again, and there were, for example, there was one location, it was Gill Middle School, that in fact is not open, and therefore could be taken off the list. So I said, okay, let's not use Gill. And so sometimes those kinds of factors come into play, and you have to respond. appropriately to it. But I'm most certainly with Commissioner Price that as a county as a county court, our primary responsibility is fair elections. And I'm guessing that everybody in this room would agree with that. The discussion comes in of, okay, so what does that cost in dollars and in people? And I would also contend at that point that on the people part, because the rationale on why we're even having this discussion is because the difficulty in finding people. I've only been involved about 40 years in this process. And it has always been, as well as anybody else who's sitting here, except for maybe, I don't think you're older than me.
42, yes.
Yeah.
When I was 2 years old, I was not watching
Yeah,
this.
you were not, but the rest of us have been involved for many years, and that there has been the history that,
Bless you.
bless you, 2 days before an election, you go through that final count, and there's always a situation where somebody has broken their leg, somebody's grandkids in Louisiana needed help, and it's Nana's job to go do that. And so there's always a certain number, there's a certain amount of slippage when you're talking about the people who we have designated as those who will implement the fair, accessible elections for all residents of Dallas County. And so that there's always been, okay, we're going to consolidate these two. And then you put out word to the affected voters that that's what's going to happen on that. So I think that we do have some experience in being able to respond appropriately to the situations that come along. But also looking at, if we have warning now of certain items, and DeSoto, we know, is one of those places that has a very, I mean, it really bumps up. And if they are having their local elections, then we ought to pay attention and at least do what we can to plan now. It may mean that 2 days before the election, when we do get the final status, that there, you know, it may change a little bit, but that does not mean that we do not take it into consideration at this point, because we do have at least, 45 days to talk about responding appropriately to creating, to implementing safe, fair elections for all residents of Dallas County. Thank you very much for your indulgence.
Just some other points. I mean, it has taken us a long time to get to the voting centers, and I know we have our party chairs here today, and I want to thank you all for the hard work that you have done, you know, not only in helping us with all this process with Mr. Scarpello, but also, you know, helping us fill out some of the voids when, like Commissioner Daniels mentioned, with election workers. But the reality is, I just want to put on the record that we were very clear when we went to voting centers that we have 2 cycles, 2 years, where we have to expand, and then we will reduce the number of voting places. This is our last cycle before we can do that. Now, it's very clear that we have a lot of issues in this last election, you know, getting workers to work. And I can see why, between the pandemic, between SB1, between everything that has come out during this last election cycle, has been really daunting. With that being said, I think, colleagues, and I totally understand what Commissioner Price is saying. I have one of the highest voting districts. I have a lot of elections going on, a lot of runoffs. It's very important for me at this point that District 3 continues to keep all the facilities. I think we all agree that we will follow his recommendation, and we will leave that district alone. From my side, it was very important that communities of color has as many possibilities of voting places as we can. That's why, for me, it was very important that all the city secretaries of the municipalities in District 4, that all the ISDs, that all the people of SEAC and NECAC were involved in the process. And for what I understand, Mr. Scarpello, all this input is there, so I will follow the recommendation based on that fact. Last but not least, I want to thank, at Dallas College. We started those conversations, as I mentioned during our last discussion, about government students to be able to get credit to work elections. that will bring, you know, a new blood into our elections. And not only that, seems like, Mr. Scarpello, you're contacting Dr. Bocanegra already. And we hope that this comes true and that we have a new generation of election workers that are ready to not only get credit as a community college student, but also get paid. So, and with the higher rates, I mean, the new salaries that we just approved last time, hopefully that will be a good incentive to bring more people to work during these 3 cycles. So with that, I'm ready to hear community input.
Well, let me just say, and Daphne just said, 2022 Democratic primary, 65,000 total early votes and votes by mail. The 48.94% were African American, 39.79% was Anglo, 8.30% was Latino, and Asian, Indian, other, that was 2.98. Commissioner District 1, 20.41. Commissioner District 2, 24.46. Commissioner District number 3, 40%, and Commissioner District number 4, 15.36. And women were 60.55. Men were 40%, and unknown was 9. And the ages were primarily, and here's where I come in. 18 to 24 was 2.18, 25 to 34 was 5.78, 35 to 49 was 15.14, 50 to 59 was 19.38, 60 to 64 was 8.64, and 65 and up was 45%. And I'm back to that age thing, because I mean, we sat there every night and we ran it, and that's just an early voting. That's, again, the city secretary in DeSoto and all of us, we talk about these numbers and people having to wait up to 4 hours. I recognize that's not everybody's experience. I don't know what other districts have. We have a number of races going on in DeSoto. I think Lancaster School only, but all of those districts. I'm just validating again what the election code says and those individuals that are primarily impacted.
Right. And Mr. Scarpello, just for the record, when will the training start for all our election
Put it
workers?
on the record.
Training has already started.
It's
So
already
we're
started?
in the middle of it right now.
Okay, and I also want to thank, and I forgot to say, the SEAC members for the 3 meetings that they have attended for more than 2 hours in the last 10 days.
I agree.
So, thank you, Mr. Scarpello.
And what were you using as voter turnout projections? Because again, we gotta, what are you using as voter turnout projections?
We have a formula that's been pretty successful for us as far as looking at historic turnout for similar type of elections, combined with similar turnout for recent elections. So there's kind of a blend
What is your percentage that you're estimating?
for the May election.
May election?
I think we're projecting 9%.
What?
I believe we're projecting 9%.
9?
9.
And the last 2 were what?
You know, I don't have that information in front of me today, but we can get you that information. In fact, I think when I met with each one of you, I showed you our rather detailed projection spreadsheet. And we can meet with you again, and that was prior to the primary, and we can meet with you again.
Yeah, and none of that, and you also allocated 2 minutes per vote during that assessment when we met in the Fox conference room.
It's actually 2.5 minutes per.
2.5.
Two and a half minutes per poll.
It didn't work.
Per check-in station, and 7 minutes per vote, and we allocated as much as 14 per voting machine, so up to 14 minutes.
And all of that cratered with regards to our numbers.
I think the issue that we had, where we had lines, which were very few, it was for those locations where people did not use their ADA machine. So that's like going into a restroom and saying, I got to go to the bathroom, and not using the ADA bathroom. And so So that's on us, because we need to do a better job of educating our poll workers that that ADA machine is usable. And so for those locations that didn't use it, that's where we had some issues.
Well, but that's getting a little afield for what we're talking about today, which is closing these sites and not closing these sites. We got some public speakers. Will the bailiff please read the rules of the quorum for our public speakers?
All Commissioner Court attendees are hereby advised that this meeting is conducted in accordance with the provisions of Dallas County Code, Section 74-71. The visitors and registered speakers are to preserve order and decorum at all times. Personal, profane, or slanderous remarks are not appropriate and will not be allowed at any time during this public meeting. Any and all applause is to be kept brief and observant of time constraints. Disruptive visitors and or registered speakers may be removed and are subject to the penalties provided in the State of Texas Penal Code, Sections 38.13, 42.01, and 42.05. Registered individual speakers are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes, and the maximum discussion on any one topic is limited to 30 minutes. Thank you.
Right. And our first speaker today is Ms. Connie Cook. Ms. Connie Cook? Ms. Connie Cook. Right? And our next speaker is Chairwoman Jennifer Stoddard Hoydu. Got it right that time.
Thank you, Judge and Commissioners. I just wanted to say that we are, as parties, are acutely aware of where the contested municipal and school board elections are and where they're not. And we will work with the Elections Department and the Democratic Party to make sure that we get those covered. We know there's going to be a lot more voters in those areas than in others. And so we will strategically make sure that we get enough people at the poll locations. And, you know, we will also work with the Elections Department and the Democratic Party in educating our voters and the public as to where these locations are, and also that they are voting centers so that you actually can vote anywhere. I think a lot of people still don't quite understand that as well. So we will work, and we will we'll improve on getting people to the places to work, and we're already doing so. So thank you for your appreciate your consideration, and this will help us. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ms. Stephanie Smith.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Smith, and I've been working as an election judge in Dallas County. And I have attended recently the SEAC meeting, and as Mr. Scarpello reviewed the map in great detail and took advice of all the people who had interest in the decisions, and I'm in favor of reducing the vote centers. Having vote centers reduced won't actually reduce access to the polls. It's quite the opposite. I believe that reducing those will enable the capacity for the county voters to help with equipment problems and improves the voters' experience when they actually walk into the poll. It also increases the reliability of every vote that's counted, that's cast. We've had difficulty staffing the polls for years, and the recent nationwide shortage of voters has exacerbated our ability to staff the polls and find experienced poll workers. Most of those who come are not experienced at all, and they go through some training, which is great, yet they still can make mistakes when they're working, and there's lots of hand-holding that's needed for the new workers, and they often require tech help. When I was working recently, we had some equipment issues, and the tech help wasn't able to come. They were overwhelmed with requests because there's so many vote centers they have to get to. This causes great stress for the poll workers, which makes it hard to retain poll workers for the next election. And it also causes stress for the voters when they're having to stand in line. Tech help has been unable to get to the polls when they've been needed, and I believe that fewer vote centers would allow for better, smaller pool of workers and better help with the equipment issues that do arise. So I urge you to vote to reduce the number of vote centers. Thank you.
Now, you know, I keep hearing inaccuracy. 2018 was the largest turnout in the history of Dallas County.
She said voter, but I think she meant worker. There's a shortage of workers.
Well, when you say workers, what do you mean?
Well, there's a nationwide shortage of people who want to work and are not already employed. And so right now, if you're looking for temporary workers to work for you on a Tuesday, that's not as easy as it was when you had 9% unemployment.
But we took and passed a court order whereby we did not have that issue for workers. And I want them to be aware for the record that we passed that court order and we did not have an issue with workers. They were trained and they were deployed. Just get the record straight.
All right, our last speaker, unless I've got a sheet, I think our last speaker is Miss Diana Kelly. Oh, okay, Diane Kelly. She is here?
No, she's on that.
Go ahead, ma'am.
That's her again.
Also, Judge, Christy Noble would like to speak, Democratic Party.
Okay, I'll ask for unanimous consent on that. Go ahead, Ms. Kelly. Oh, you're on mute. You're muted. No. What's that mean? Hey, tell her where the mute is on the
I
screen.
think there.
Oh, she's unmuted, but maybe your mic's not hooked up or something.
Yeah.
So can you hear me? You're apparently unmuted, but unfortunately, there's an issue with your mic. We can't hear you.
Actually, she keeps talking.
I'm sorry, why don't we take another speaker and we'll see if we can get your computer, you work on that, see if you get that mic up. All right, do we have any requests from the people that are in the crowd to speak? One of the commissioners? Okay, so in order for you to speak, since you're not on the list, I need unanimous consent from the court. Any problem with these two individuals speaking?
Well, I've got another speaker that is calling, says she can't having trouble getting in too. And she's a SEAC member.
Okay.
So if we're gonna do it, put them all in the group.
Move
problem.
approval to
How many are we talking about?
listen to the people that are
Three
here.
people? That's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
All right, so,
You have a motion and a second, Judge.
the motion is second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we're going to suspend that rule, and sir, come on forward, and you can be our first speaker.
Thank you, Commissioners and Judge. I actually did sign up online, so if there's a way to check to see if there's another list somewhere, that would be great. So,
Please state your name and address.
my name is Wes Bowen, and my address is 9427 Windy Knoll Drive, Dallas, Texas, 75243.
Can
I'm sorry, you got to pull that mic up and start over again, please.
Try.
Pull the mic a little closer to you, please. There.
My name is Wes Bowen, and my address is 9427 Windy Knoll Drive, Dallas, Texas, 75243. So I think, so I'm also in favor of the consolidation because I've worked elections and I see the shortage. And I think there may be some confusion between heavy turnout elections and low turnout elections because frankly, we've never had enough workers to staff nearly 500 vote centers for these low turnout elections. And I think if you look at everything about the statute that allowed, that the legislature passed, that called for vote centers and countywide voting, I think you'll see that the intention was that because people could vote anywhere, that the number of precinct voting locations would actually be reduced. Well, in typical Dallas County fashion, we hyper-politicized that process of VCAC, and lo and behold, we add 60 some odd locations because we took all of the early voting locations and we made them vote center locations. And so instead of shrinking the number, we actually have more locations now. So, and I know that we've consolidated those locations for low turnout elections because I was a judge and I had ballot styles for 10 different precincts, in my location and my Democrat counterpart had the same thing. So we have never had enough workers for these low turnout elections historically to cover 480 vote centers. So, I appreciate the efforts by Mr. Scarpello and both of the parties working together. Saw some of the hearings as well, and I think it was a very thoughtful approach to closing the ones where, frankly, they're just too close together. And a lot of times that is where you have an early voting location now that becomes a vote center on election day, and you're continuing to have that same small polling place that was already an election day voting location right next to it. So I think it makes sense to close it. So I appreciate the efforts. Thank you.
Let me ask you something. Do you believe that voters basically return to the polling places to where they are familiar? How long have you been voting?
So I've been voting since I was 18.
How long is that? I don't know how old you are.
Let's call it 40 years.
Okay. And I've got a few years on you. Do you go to the same polling place?
I don't.
You don't? Okay. I basically do. And when we first did voting centers, we looked at each one of our districts. And I think my district was the one district where where a few individuals voted outside of what they traditionally do within the precinct. That is, the individuals are more homogeneous. They tend to go where they've traditionally gone. And even though you've only moved it a half a mile or a mile, they may not go. Yeah. Plus, I just gave statistics in my district. The majority of them are over 60 years of age. I know that's not old, but 60 years of age.
May I respond?
Sure.
So I respect your opinion, Commissioner Price. And listen, in a perfect world, I wish we had people to run all these locations. I differ from you a little bit in that I think that we do have a responsibility to use our tax dollars wisely. And when we're spending almost $300 a ballot to run these voting locations, I think we're not being good stewards of the county's money.
Well, I appreciate that frugality all of a sudden, but at the end of the day, it's about every vote counting as well, okay?
I agree with you.
Your vote, there was a time, you didn't have to do literacy tests. You didn't have to do any of that, poll taxes. Some people's vote has value, and as far as I'm concerned, every vote counts.
I agree with you.
We had elections.
Sure.
In the Democratic primary side, where mail ballots, overseas ballots, guess what? Guess what the margin was?
I don't know.
1.
Wow.
And it flipped back and forth.
So may I respond?
Sure.
So I agree with you conceptually. I wish that we had the ability to staff every location, but even if we did, I think there's a better way to use the county's money, because spending $5,000 to get 20 people, I could run a limo service if you hired me, and I could go pick those people up and I would take them to a voting location and make sure that they voted, since they can vote in any location.
Well, that's the Uber model. I recognize that. But it's about access, and it's not as though, you heard me say on the 18-year-olds that the number of individuals who voted for the first time.
Yeah.
They were primarily seasoned voters, what we call D1s and D2s and D3s, and we did the data on those individuals. These were seasoned voters, not brand new voters in Dallas County.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
I believe Christy Noble, our chairwoman of the Democratic Party, had her hand up. Chairwoman Noble, you want to come address us? And then we'll try back Ms. Kelly, see if the mic works. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
We can hear you great.
Okay.
Name and address?
Name and address.
Christy Noble, 9821 Estacado, 75228. Through the process, I just want to talk about the process that we've gone through a little bit, and as far as, I 100% agreed with the process that we started to look at a different way of getting these vote centers and figuring out which ones we could consolidate. The half-mile initial process and ensuring that all of the groups, including the ISDs, the city secretaries, the parties, and everything, and you as commissioners as well of your district, to determine if there was any reason why any location should not be changed. That was the reason that we could go forward with this. My recommendation was that we end up with a 10% decrease at most, and with the direction to keep all of the voting centers on the list in your precinct or in your district, Commissioner Price. We're right at that 10%, and then go back to looking at it after the election and seeing if there are issues with where we have closed those that are close to others. And then in addition, I do want to talk about again the need and the way that we have been going about getting election judges and election workers. We had this round numerous people within our office working for months to recruit and retain election workers and election judges, and working with the elections department. It was difficult because of the pandemic, and it was difficult because of the worker shortage and of SB1. And I think in 2022, we need to go through this process to figure out a different way and a better way to do elections, and we have to take baby steps to make this happen, and we have to do that together. And so I think this process is the first step in that.
Ms. Noble, would you be surprised at the number of individuals just from a contact standpoint were not notified timely? In fact, we had some come down to the court and testified. One was a candidate and was notified the day of election.
Notified of what?
To be an election judge.
That was not through the Dallas Democratic Party, but I did hear about that. Absolutely. Yeah. They were on that list that they wanted to be called. And what I understand, the reason that the election department did that was because there were 71 people who had committed to be election judges and who did not show up on the day before the election. And so they were making calls on that Sunday, that Monday, and actually the Tuesday of the election to try to make that happen.
No, they were not called. And I had just...
Who was not called? I'm sorry.
The election judges, the individuals who historically would have been election judges. The reason Mr. Jones, Vinton Jones, candidate, came down here and said he got called the day of.
He did.
Okay. I mean, so he could have given notice if he'd been called 30 days before. This man gets called the day of. Somebody thinks he's still going to possibly be an election judge. He's a candidate. We had numerous calls in our office. They said, hey, you guys didn't call till the last minute. We had numerous calls, even with utilizing polling places. They said, well, we thought you weren't going to use us. We hadn't heard from you. I mean, we kept a list. So that's not clearly all the facts.
The list that I had, we called every single person numerous times on our judge list.
Well, you may have.
Sure.
I'm telling you what happened, and we have a list of individuals who were not called.
Yeah,
Understood.
I can attest to what Commissioner Price is saying, because I was getting phone calls too of people the day of the election saying, I just got notice. So, no, I understand, and, was it 1, 2, 3, 6, 12? I don't know how many people, but it did happen. Sure.
Yeah, short notice. That's all I'm saying. If we know we're going to have an election, don't wait till the last minute.
Well, and I want to assure you, from the Democratic Party perspective, we did not wait till the last minute. We have been calling and working to get election judges from June of last year for the primary, and it was a continual process. If there was a list that did not get called until the day of, that was not part of the list that we had to work from. And I just want to reiterate, there were some locations up to the last day of the primary, maybe very few that weren't covered at that point. But again, the day before or 2 days before the election, 71 people said, I do not want to work, basically because they did not show up to get their equipment. So if we had known, if we as the Democratic Party would have known a week before or 5 days before that there were 71 more vacancies, then by God, we would have been calling at an even higher rate during that period. Does that make sense?
No, because
It doesn't?
Norma,
Wait a minute, wait a minute. I want to understand why that doesn't make sense.
Norma Kimbrough. Again, I got to.
Can I ask a question though?
Sure.
Why doesn't it make sense that if on the day before the election or 2 days before the election, 71 people who committed already said they weren't going to work?
Well,
if we would have known that,
that's what
we would have
you're
been
saying.
working ahead 5 or 6, 7 days.
That's what you're saying, and I'm telling
It is what
you
I'm
that
saying, and
the
it is the
Norma Kimbroughs of the world called the Friday before the election.
Who
and
did she
said,
call?
Huh?
Who did she call?
She called us.
Awesome.
Because you had been called, somebody had called her, and she said it's too late. I'm telling you, we got that kind of list. People will get calling us saying, "Hey, they did. You called.
Sure.
Somebody called, but she said, "Hey, you're calling me the Friday before. It's too late."
Absolutely, absolutely. But what's the solution to 71 people on the Sunday before the election not showing up? What else should we do there? Because I'm open. I want to make this work.
I've been here all this time. I've never heard that kind of number. I know we closed 26. Never heard that kind of number. Never.
That 71 people?
71 people either decided they weren't going to show up. Never.
71 people did not show up and get their equipment on Sunday before the primary election.
Well, I'm telling you.
So I think perhaps you, Commissioner Price, are telling us those people were not called. What Ms. Noble is saying is that the list that the Democratic Party had, the numbers that they had, they called repeatedly, beginning with the numbers they had last June up until they thought they'd fill things. And I don't know if I don't think all 71 of these people were Democrats, but so I don't think you're necessarily saying two things that are, it's not impossible for you to both be saying something that's correct.
Because my road and bridge office is one of the distribution points of equipment. And I always try to welcome people to my road and bridge office. And so I talked to the people who were there working. And it was probably 2/3 into the time period, which the election judges would have picked up their equipment, and they said, yeah, there's still 6 people who haven't done it, or whatever that number was. Right. And they said, and our response at this point is to start calling them, saying, okay, today's the day to pick up. You know, where are you? We're going to be here till 4 o'clock or whatever the time frame. Right. In order to encourage that participation. I know that, you know, having been involved a little bit on both of your positions, that in fact, there are going to be changed phone numbers. They moved to their sister-in-law's house and the phone number is no longer there. Or, I mean, just all kinds of things happen. And so you're trying to piece together how it is that in fact you get to those people before the Friday morning before the election in order to know whether you've got a spot to fill or whether there's
or they're actually going to show up.
It's going to be there.
Yeah.
So I know that the efforts have been made on both of the parts to do it. There is still the reality, though, is that it's not a perfect match. And I know that in our experience, it has never been a perfect match. That does not mean that we do not keep on attempting with additional information to get closer so that we don't end up on election day having to consolidate even more, because I know of precincts where half of the workers did not show up on election day. Right. And so you go, okay, so now what do we do? That election judge is scurrying to fill those positions so that they in fact can run their voting.
And those were for probably the people that were called, you know, way too late. Right. But with that being said, I mean, that's what is so important, Mr. Scarpello, and, you know, to both parties and to the whole group, that we have trained workers from Dallas County, that we have a set of people, emergency trained.
Reservoir.
Emergency
Yes.
trained, what was the name that we used last time? Emergency personnel trained, not only county, workers, but other peoples in the community ready to go. That will be called at the last minute if we have 71 people that show up, that do not show up to work. So with that being said, I know that we have learned a good lesson, and we're ready to move forward. I mean, try to be sure that this next time, we do a better job and we have more people working elections. This consolidation that is presented today is only an 11% consolidation. We still have around 400 voting centers in Dallas County. And definitely we have to have better communication also with our judges and our employees. I know Commissioner Price and Commissioner Daniels both mentioned the fact that some of them did not have the complete packages or didn't know how much equipment they were picking up, what's supposed to be in their boxes. So we have to do a better job there as well. And then, move from there. I think that the proposal that is here went through as many, as many people as we could by state law to do the reduction. We still, by state law, after the second cycle, could reduce all the way to 50%. If I remember correctly, those are the numbers. So with that being said, thank you so much, Ms. Noble. We appreciate your input.
Did you get a list of those judges that complained in writing? The court did. I made a distribution to the court. Did you get a list of those as well?
That complained in writing, that gave information to you all? I do not have that list. We've compiled a list on the Democratic Party side of issues with the election in general from judges and from voters, any information that we gathered. We are going to be going over that with Mr. Sarkello and his team later this week to address the exact things that you're talking about, Commissioner Garcia, in terms of making sure we're using the correct processes and we're continually doing process improvement as a collective around elections. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you. We've got two other speakers. Ms. Diane Kelly, if she was able to get her microphone working. Ms. Diane Kelly. There's Diane. Looks like your mic's still not working. Could we possibly have her call in? We can see her face. Okay, so they're going to send you a call-in number. Because of the Open Meetings Act, we need to see your face. But then you'll call in and you'll talk to us on the phone, okay? So how are we going to get her the call-in number?
I'm sending her a chat message right now with the call-in number.
Okay, he's sending you, can you hear him? I don't know if he's.
Text message.
Okay, so you're going to get a text message.
Dr. Lavelle.
And then we'll do her.
And did we have another speaker live, or, because we have 3 additional, right?
Yeah, we got another one.
Yeah, but did you get her the number? We'll do her next if you got her the number.
That was Dr. Lavelle's.
Good afternoon.
Hey, we can hear you. Great, thank you.
Awesome. Of course you can. This is Lavella Levels, 811 South Poplar Hill Road in the lovely city of Ovilla, Texas, 75154. I'd like to share with the court that I am a member of SEAC. And I did attend the meeting last week, and the meeting in the storm on last Monday night, the meeting this past Monday night and last night. And we are a dedicated team, and we are committed to ensure that we provide our input towards the accuracy. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so we are really committed to ensure that we provide our input to the elections department so that election department can provide you with recommendations. The recommendations regarding the voting center reduction, we've had several conversations. My specific opinion has been very consistent from day one, even upon last night. I do not agree with closing any voting center, especially with the time limits that we have at this time that really limits us in communicating to our residents, in communicating to the citizens of Dallas County. I am concerned about the lack of a communication plan. if we feel that we operate with a 15% turnout rate in the March primaries, we surely can operate with the same staffing numbers with the expected 5% participation in the upcoming May and June elections. If we want to utilize that same premise for the reason of reducing the voting centers, it's completely accurate to apply that same rate, that same premise to keeping open all the voting centers with utilizing the number of staff persons that were available in the March primaries. Again, I shared my concerns, and the specific centers that I did request throughout the days were agreed to be kept on the list. Ultimately, I then voiced my opinion to keep all of the voting centers open. If we are going to say that if anyone requests to keep a voting center open, they just need to request that. My request was keep them all open, but they were not. I just want to be clear that my opinion has been from day one up until this moment that I do not support any voting center closing. Any voting center closing is a possibility. It increases the opportunity of a deterred vote. As we shared earlier, the communication is not even included in this plan. Placing a sign on a closed center is not acceptable for me.
All right, thank you for your comments. You're out of time, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.
Our last speaker is Ms. Diane Kelly. Ms. Diane Kelly? There we go. Okay.
While she's coming, Judge, and whenever she comes up,
Yeah.
I want the court to instruct Mr. Scarpello to demonstrate and submit to us a backup plan in county employees for the purpose of having additional workers.
Sure.
I know, I thought we were still waiting on her since she's.
No, what's the status, man?
Beg your pardon? Okay. Yeah, okay, so neither one, okay. So.
Well, if you can hear us, Ms. Kelly, there's no video or audio, and to be compliant with the open meetings, what we'll need you to do is have your camera on so we can see your face, and then use that call-in number and call. And we are probably going to be voting soon, so, if you miss that, please, send an email with your thoughts to us, or sign up for our next meeting, which is next Tuesday. Go ahead, Mr. Scarpello.
In response to Commissioner Price, we plan on submitting an addendum item for next Tuesday's meeting to enhance, to provide some more financial incentive for our county poll worker, or county workers to become poll workers. So that's in the works.
Well, okay, then that all sounds good, but we've never had a problem in the past, and I appreciate that. We've never had a problem in the past with the planned court order that we did. And all we need to do is have the planned recruitment, and then training. There were individuals who were being trained at the last minute, based on maybe what Ms. Nova said, out to 71 individuals. But when you got a plan, you already got all that in the queue.
All right.
Okay.
So if there's no further comments or unreadiness, we've got a motion and a second. And this is on the amended list, which this is the correct amended list, right?
Yeah, but threes are on that amended list.
Yes,
I don't believe so, but is that right?
Yeah.
Commissioner Price.
Threes are on there to be deleted.
Yes.
Yes, that's what I said.
Ah, yeah.
So,
Okay,
Commissioner
so
Price.
let me do this. I'm gonna make a substitute motion.
Right.
Okay? So Chair's making a substitute motion that we'll vote on first, and this is to vote on, Exhibit 1, which is this large, document, but leaving in place, so that they will be open for the election, all, polling locations in Commissioner Precinct 3. That is, my motion. Is there a second to my motion?
And clarifying in District 4, one location. I don't know where was the disconnect, Mr. Scarpello, but I have 12, and you mentioned 13.
Which do you have a particular
Let
location?
me go and look into them, but as long as we leave that in the motion, Judge,
What?
because
Do you know the name of the one that we wanted? 'Cause I-
do not have it in front of me, but I do know that he said 13 and I have 12 in my count. So I will go ahead and give it to you, Mr. Scarpello, as soon as I have it.
Well, just,
So then the
just
further
put a
amendment-
number in the substitute motion.
Right, exactly. And that will
39.
be 12,
39 is the total number of deletions.
correct. Sounds good. We leave it on 12.
So, my substitute motion is Exhibit 1 with all the polling places on the list in Commissioner Precinct 3 remaining open, with only 12 closing in Commissioner Precinct 4. Is there a second to that motion?
Okay, I have one quick question.
Second.
Was that the amended list that went out today?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Got a second.
Okay, so we have a second. Is there any unreadiness? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
Hello,
Oh, is that Miss Kelly?
I'm here. Yes,
We'll
sir.
hear from you, Miss Kelly. We're still in
Oh, thank you
session. Please
so
go
much
ahead.
for your patience. I'm Diane Kelly, 6657 Crestway Court. I really apologize. Obviously challenged with the volume, but thank you for the opportunity. I'll try to make this quick. I am in support of reducing the voting locations, and just in reference to this past joint election, according to the reports that I have off of Dallas County Votes, the turnout was approximately 7.48%. And I would say over the past few elections, constitutional, all of these different elections, and I'm getting this directly from Dallas County Votes website, it averages somewhere around maybe 7 to maybe 9.25, 9.5. But that is the overall average that I'm seeing, consistently seeing. And I also looked at if people were voting in their specific precincts. And so for the most part, I agree, most people tend to go back to where they normally vote. However, there's a percentage of people that don't, and it could be due to where they work, and it's more convenient to go somewhere else. But there is certainly a percentage. I don't have that. I'm happy to try to get that number for you to see what we're looking at. But definitely people vote in other locations as well. And my experience, and this is not, this happens in all districts, so please don't take this as a specific district, but I was in District 3 on Election Day, and there were challenges. There was only one judge, and he got very late notice that he needed to get a team together. He did not know that he would not have a co-judge until the day before the election. So I think if we could do some things to make it easier even for judges and for the clerks, everything will move much smoother. And so I am in support of reducing the number of voting locations, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anything else?
Did you want to talk about communications plan?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, I'll try to get a sense of the court on this. We need to make sure that people know what polls are open, what polls are closed. We want to do that in a way that is helpful to our voters, and that may take some money. I know you've got your idea of a Facebook and social media campaign that can be done without expenditures. but I'd like to see us.
Communication plan. The word he said then was plan. We need to see a plan.
So, but I think what I'm sensing from the court is there would be a willingness to spend some money to let people know these are the polling places that are open around you, right?
Yes.
In those areas where there's a closed polling place. I don't need you to, like for instance, I don't think I'm hearing from the court that they want to spend a bunch of money in Addison where we're, aren't closing any polling places. But in, Bolt Springs, where we are closing a polling place, the people that would be using that polling place, people would be closest to that polling place, we probably would want to spend a little money to communicate with.
Well, Judge, and I appreciate that. I think right now, because we've heard so much about open and close, we just need to get
Yeah, we don't need to tell people what's closed, we need to tell them what's open near them so they can go vote.
I think what we've found is that, what we're finding more and more often is that people do not realize we're in a vote center model. They think that they have to go to a precinct.
I agree.
And so I think that we need to do a better job of saying, yes, you can vote anywhere at any time, and here's how you find out which locations. And so that should be the message rather than that we're closing down locations. And so we've got a plan to put, a moderate plan to kind of put that message out there utilizing all of the networks of the county, of all of your networks, using the networks of all the cities, the city secretaries, the candidates, and the parties.
And I don't know if it's possible to do some communication through somebody, some company that would do it or whatever. We've got to have company. But, so for instance, you're closing a polling place in University Park. Can we figure out who voted at that place last time and contact them through some way and say, hey, folks, this place is your polling, or is the nearest one to you? Nearest one to you is whatever it is.
Judge, that's on our list to actually contact those voters who voted at those locations. We just have to put it through we have to vet it to make sure that would be legal. But the idea is to say, hey, you voted at location X in the past, just FYI, it won't be open this time. Here are the nearest four.
Well, and I use the Skyline branch and the Skyline Library and the Skyline School for a reason. Only thing separates them is the Deacon Railroad track. But the difference in terms of when you look at the votes there, the 150 on this side of the poll, 187 on the other side, it may not mean anything, but again, I'm going to go back to what I told the gentleman earlier. Some of us have been around long enough that we've seen those 8-vote margins, and in this past election, not 1998, but in 2022, we got into, and you know what race I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Constable's race out in North Dallas. It came down to one vote.
Right.
One vote, and then we waited for some other votes to come in. So, I mean, while, we want to talk about the cost vote, it was about one vote there for a minute, and then I think overseas ballots came in, and then you went into I call them the donkeys or whatever the hell they are. You went in and found some more ballots that had not been counted. And so all of a sudden that whole thing turned around out there. But all I'm continuing to express is what my members said, SEAC members, that every vote counts, and that's where I am.
But of the 20, and I realize this is most of our population is in Dallas, but there's 25 cities, and we've only got poll closings in 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of those. So I don't think we're contemplating spending a whole bunch of money to tell people nothing has changed in, Wilmer or Sunnyvale.
No.
But in the places where things have changed, we want to make sure people know that they've changed. So I think the will of the court is saying, put an addendum on and bring it back to us and tell us, how much money you want to spend
Okay.
to do that.
We can do that.
Okay, is there anything else before we adjourn today, guys? All right, thank you all for your patience and your attendance. We are adjourned.
We're working at it.